The morning sun streamed through the gauzy curtains of my childhood bedroom, painting everything in soft gold. My wedding dress hung on the closet door, a sleek ivory silk gown with no embellishments, just elegance in its purest form. I stood at the mirror, fastening the simple pearl necklace my grandmother had left me. It was the only piece of family I'd chosen to wear that day. I was calm, or at least pretending to be. The silence was broken by a single chime, my phone. There was something about the sound that made my stomach twist. I reached for it without thinking, thumb instinctively swiping the screen. And then I saw it. A photo. A smiling Samantha, my younger sister, standing in front of a podium at some networking luncheon in Chicago. Hair styled to perfection, lipstick that must have been Chanel, dressed in a cream power suit I knew cost more than my entire wedding. But it wasn't the image that sent my pulse racing. It was the caption. So proud of my daughter, who embodies grace, discipline, and family loyalty. True class never needs to announce itself. It was posted by my mother 1 hour ago, the morning of my wedding. I stared at the screen for a long time, blinking, waiting for the tears or the rage something. But all I felt was a hollow silence spreading across my chest. No mention of me, no good wishes, no hint that their eldest daughter was getting married in 3 hours. Just a public coronation of Samantha. Again. A soft knock broke the stillness. "Claire, can I come in?" It was Marla, my best friend since college and my maid of honor, the only one from my past who'd stood by me through the years. "Yeah," I said, setting my phone face down on the vanity. She stepped in, radiant in her wine-colored dress, but her face fell when she saw mine. What happened? I didn't say anything, just handed her the phone. She read the post, her jaw tightening with each word. "Oh, hell, no," I forced a bitter smile. "Today. Of all days." Marla scrolled through the comments. Her eyes grew darker. "Claire, don't read these. Please." But I already had. Aunt Judy one daughter to be proud of. We raised them right. Uncle Mitch, that Samantha is going places, always knew she had the spark. And then from my father, our pride. Some children understand what family means. That one did it. I stood up, my knees shaking slightly. In the reflection, I looked like a bride, but inside I felt like a stranger. "I don't know what I expected," I said. Maybe some hope that they'd surprise me, that they'd show up. Marla walked over, placed her hands on my shoulders. "Claire, you are not the problem. You've never been." I let out a long breath. "I just wish it didn't still hurt." "They don't define you." I picked up my bouquet, dried lavender and baby's breath arranged by hand the night before. "No," I said slowly, "but they're about to learn who I really am." Marla narrowed her eyes. "Claire, what are you thinking?" I turned back to the mirror and looked at the woman in white. Not soft, not broken, steady, ready. "I'm thinking," I whispered, "that people can only take advantage of your silence for so long." Then the church bells rang in the distance. It was time. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't walking towards something in search of approval. I was walking away from it, towards something entirely mine. A new name, a new chapter. And soon they would see what it cost them to turn their backs on the daughter who'd been keeping their roof from caving in. Literally. 3 days before my wedding, I was standing barefoot in the greenhouse behind my small garden shop, trimming the last of the late summer roses for centerpieces. The shop was my pride, Claire's roots in bloom. Modest, quiet, entirely mine. Every inch of it built from years of early mornings, late deliveries, and hands stained with soil. I'd chosen not to hire a wedding planner. Too expensive. And honestly, I didn't trust anyone else to understand the way I wanted things: simple, intimate, sincere. That same morning, I had gotten a call from my mom. I hesitated before picking up. "Claire, she said your sister just got invited to keynote the Women in Leadership Summit. It's huge. It's the same day as your wedding, but I know you'll understand. This is a major opportunity for her career." I was silent. "Claire, I heard you. Sweetheart, you're having a small ceremony, right?" "Close friends. Samantha's event is being televised. It could open doors for her in DC. She's been working so hard." I bit down hard on the inside of my cheek. I could taste blood. "It's okay, Mom," I said finally, my voice low. "I understand," but I didn't. Not really. Because I wasn't just losing my sister's presence. A few hours later, my dad texted me. "We've decided to attend Samantha's summit to support her big moment. Hope the wedding goes beautifully. Love, Dad." That was it. Not "we're proud of you." Not "we wish we could be there." Just logistics. Like I was a scheduling conflict. They had always been like that. Selective in their pride, generous with praise for Samantha. When we were kids, I was the one who wanted to start a compost bin in the backyard. Samantha laughed and told me it smelled like garbage. My parents agreed and shut it down. In high school, I got into the state university with a partial scholarship. Samantha got into Yale, and from that day forward, it was as though I didn't exist. Even after college, when I worked 2 jobs to start my flower shop, they never visited. Not once. But when Samantha joined a political campaign at 24, they flew to DC and posted photos with captions like, "So proud of our future leader." And yet, 2 years ago, when my dad's real estate investments collapsed, I was the one they called quietly, shamefully, without telling Samantha. "I just need a few months to get back on my feet," he had said. They didn't ask for money directly, just told me they were in trouble, that the mortgage payments had become overwhelming. I stepped in, quietly, anonymously. I rerouted the payments through an LLC I set up for vendor services. They thought it was some bank deal or restructuring program. They never questioned it. Every month I sent $3,200 to cover their mortgage and keep the house. It wasn't easy. I had to scale back my shop hours, skip vacations, postpone repairs. There were nights I ate toast for dinner. But I did it. Because some part of me believed hope that it would matter. That eventually they'd see me as something more than the other daughter. The backup plan. The one who didn't shine but stood quietly in the background just in case. But now, 3 days before my wedding, I was being told again that I didn't matter enough. Not to show up for. Not to love out loud. Just enough to keep them afloat, but not enough to sit in the front row. That night, I sat with Blaine, my fiancé, on our balcony. The air smelled like tomato vines and basil. He wrapped an arm around me. "They're not coming, are they?" he asked gently. "No," I said. He was quiet for a long time. Then Claire, "When are you going to stop trying to earn something they were never willing to give?" "I don't know," I whispered. "I guess I thought, if I just kept showing up, maybe one day they would too." He kissed the top of my head. "They're fools, and they don't deserve you." I nodded. Maybe it's time they realized that. The night before the wedding, I stayed in the small guest cottage behind my shop. It wasn't fancy, just a converted shed with a kitchenette and a clawfoot tub, but it was mine. I had repainted the walls a warm sage green and filled the shelves with dried lavender eucalyptus and little handwritten affirmations I'd collected over the years. Marla spent the night with me, refusing to let me wake up alone on my big day. She brought sparkling apple cider and takeout pad thai, and for a few hours I almost forgot the ache in my chest. "You sure you want to go through with this?" she asked as we curled up on the futon, watching the fairy lights twinkle above us. "Marrying Blaine?" I asked. "Absolutely." I meant getting married without them. I was quiet for a long time. Then I said it hurts, but not as much as chasing their approval used to. Marla nodded. "You've come a long way." "I'm still not sure where I'm going," I admitted. She grinned. "Forward." "You're going forward." The morning of the wedding was bright and cool, the kind of rare September day that smelled like both endings and beginnings. The garden behind the shop had been transformed into a ceremony space. Rustic wooden benches, strings of lights, flower garlands I'd woven myself at 3 a.m. the night before. Blaine's family had flown in from Minnesota. They were warm and loud and hugged like they meant it. His mom brought lemon bars and called me sweetheart. His dad cried when he saw me in my dress. They felt like the kind of family you'd read about in novels. Fictional, ideal, impossible. And yet here they were. I tried not to think about the empty chairs that would be sitting in the front row reserved for people who chose not to come. I tried not to look at my phone. but of course I did. At 10:03 a.m., my mother posted another picture of Samantha. She was speaking on a panel now, microphone in hand, the caption reading, "Raised a leader. Grateful for daughters who carry the family legacy with pride." Hashtag family. First, I stared at the screen, the air going still around me. The post already had dozens of comments. Such grace. She's amazing. Your family must be so proud. I felt my chest tighten. My hands trembled. I didn't cry. I just felt something snap. Not in a loud, dramatic way. No doors slamming or plates breaking. More like the soft click of a lock opening. Like something had shifted quietly inside of me and wouldn't be shifting back. I showed the post to Marla. She didn't say anything. She just put her hand on my shoulder and said, "They'll regret this one day." I smiled, but it wasn't a soft smile. It was sharp, quiet, resolute. "They already have," I said. The wedding itself was perfect. Not magazine perfect, not Pinterest perfect. Real. I walked down the aisle barefoot, carrying a bouquet of garden roses, wild thyme, and rosemary. Blaine's eyes lit up when he saw me, and I swear the whole garden went silent for that one heartbeat. The ceremony was short and sweet. Vows written by hand, laughter, a few tears, applause as we kissed and turned to face the world together for the first time as husband and wife. For a few precious hours, I was able to forget, to exist fully in love. But the moment I returned to the cottage that night and took off the dress, folded it carefully onto the bed, and saw the pile of unopened mail on the counter, I remembered. The top envelope was from the mortgage company, addressed to me, not my parents. My name, my billing address, my burden. I ran my fingers across the seal, knowing what it was. A new payment confirmation. I didn't open it. I just stared at it and thought about that caption again. Grateful for daughters who carry the family legacy. I was the one carrying the legacy. Quietly. Invisibly. They were just too busy admiring the parade to notice who was holding up the float. And suddenly, I knew. It was over. Not my marriage, not my business, but the arrangement, the pretending, the hope. I walked across the cottage to my desk, opened my laptop, and logged into my bank portal. I scrolled to the scheduled mortgage payment for the following week. My finger hovered over the button, Cancel Recurring Payment. I clicked yes. A confirmation popped up, one more box to check. Reason for cancellation, I typed forgotten daughter. And I hit send. The next morning, Blaine was already in the kitchen when I woke up. The smell of fresh coffee filled the little cottage, mingling with the scent of rosemary I had left drying on the windowsill. He smiled when I walked in, still wrapped in the oversized robe his mother had given me as a bridal gift. "Morning, Mrs. Jameson." I smiled back, but it didn't quite reach my eyes. He noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" I walked over to the counter and picked up the envelope from the mortgage company, the one I had stared at the night before. I handed it to him. He frowned. "Claire, why is this addressed to you?" I sat down on the stool and wrapped my fingers around a warm mug. "Because I've been the one paying it. For 2 years." Blaine blinked, slowly lowering the envelope. "Wait, what?" I took a long breath. "You remember when my dad lost everything in that real estate crash?" "Yeah. I thought they had some deal worked out with the bank." "That deal was me," I said quietly. "They were about to lose the house. They called sounding desperate. So I made a few calls, worked out a payment plan, and set up an LLC to funnel the money anonymously. They thought it was some kind of refinancing program." Blaine stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "Claire, why didn't you tell me?" "Because I knew you'd try to talk me out of it. And because some part of me thought if I did this for them, they'd finally see me, appreciate me, love me like they love Samantha." He didn't say anything for a long time. Then finally, "How much? $3,000 a month. Every month, for 2 years." Blaine did the math in his head, then let out a low whistle. $72,000. I nodded. "And after everything, they still didn't come to your wedding?" I looked down into my mug. "Yeah." He crossed the kitchen, pulled out the stool beside me, and sat down. So, what happens now? I turned to him, a strange calm settling over me. I canceled the payments last night. His eyebrows lifted slightly. Did you tell them? No, not yet. What are you planning to do? I reached into the drawer and pulled out a large manila envelope. Inside were copies of the payment statements, bank receipts, and a printout of my mother's Instagram post from the morning of our wedding, the one about Samantha. Blaine watched as I slid the photo into the envelope and wrote one line in red ink across the top of the caption, "Define family." Then I added a sticky note on the final payment confirmation, funded by the forgotten daughter. Blaine exhaled slowly. You're really doing this. They deserve to know who's been keeping their life from falling apart, and they deserve to feel what it's like when that safety net disappears. He paused, then nodded. Are you ready for what comes next? I met his eyes. I've never been more ready. I mailed the envelope that afternoon. Priority. Signature required. 3 days later, the call came. Block number. I let it ring. Voicemail. Then again, and again. I didn't pick up until the 5th time. Claire. It was my mother. Her voice was sharp around the edges, shaken, breathless, almost hoarse. We received something from the bank. Something confusing. You mean the foreclosure notice? A pause. Yes, but that must be some mistake. Your father called the bank and they said that the payments had been coming from a third party, that they're no longer coming. Silence. I let it hang. Then I said, that third party was me. There was a rustling on the line, my father maybe. Muffled voices. Then she came back on. Claire, why didn't you tell us? You never asked. You never noticed. You just assumed the world would keep saving you. Claire, sweetheart. Don't call me that. I could hear her breath catch. You chose not to come to my wedding, I continued. You made a public show of your favorite daughter, and you humiliated me. That wasn't our intent. It never is, I said, cutting her off. But intent doesn't matter when the outcome is this consistent. Claire, the house. I laughed quietly. The house isn't your biggest problem anymore. She was silent for a long time. Then with a whisper, what do you want from us? I didn't answer, because I didn't know yet, but I did know this. They had been building their life on a foundation they didn't even realize I was holding up. And now they were about to see what happened when that foundation disappeared. The next morning, I was restocking shelves at the shop when Marla stormed in, holding her phone like it was about to catch fire. You need to see this, she said, nearly breathless. I took the phone expecting another family group post from Samantha or some backhanded compliment from my aunt. But it wasn't that. It was a screenshot my mom's Facebook post. It read, "Devastated. Some children repay love with cruelty. Betrayal from within the family is the hardest to bear. Prayers appreciated." Below it were dozens of sympathetic comments. Prayers, hearts, crying face emojis. And then came the second wave questions. From neighbors, church friends, distant cousins. What happened? Is everything okay with the house? Did something happen with Claire? I stood behind the counter phone, frozen in my hand. I could feel the tightness behind my eyes building like a headache, a pressure, a rage I wasn't ready to unleash just yet. They're flipping the narrative, I said flatly. They're making themselves the victims. Marla folded her arms. Of course they are. Classic Helen and David Fletcher throw a stone, then cry when the glass shatters. That afternoon, the shop was quiet. I had 2 customers before lunch. I kept checking the post comments, now over 100. People were starting to speculate. And then someone asked the magic question. Didn't they miss Claire's wedding last week? I could have left it alone, but I didn't. I opened my laptop, logged into my personal Facebook account for the first time in weeks, and clicked the new post button. Then I typed, for 2 years I paid my parents' mortgage without their knowledge, $72,000. They never asked why the house didn't go into foreclosure. They never thanked me. Last week they chose to skip my wedding and posted on social media about how proud they were of my sister. So I stopped paying. The foreclosure notice they received this week. That was me. Signed, the forgotten daughter. I stared at it for a moment, then clicked post. Within 5 minutes, it had 43 reactions. Within 20, I had 80 new friend requests. By the end of the day, local news pages were reposting it under headlines like, "Daughter pays parents mortgage for 2 years, then cuts them off after wedding snub." I turned off my phone and went back to work. The next morning, I woke up to nearly 1,000 shares. My inbox was flooded with messages, some kind, some furious, some just nosy. One was from Samantha. "I can't believe you're airing this publicly. This is disgusting, Claire. You need to take it down." I didn't reply. The second message came from my uncle. "We all knew you had issues, but I never thought you'd stoop this low." I blocked him, but the third message was different. It was from Blaine's sister, whom I barely knew. "Good for you. My husband's parents cut me off after I married him. I wish I had your strength. Thank you for speaking up." That one made me cry. I walked into the kitchen where Blaine was reading the morning news, still half asleep. "They're spiraling," I said, voice still raspy from sleep. He looked up. "Let them." I didn't expect it to go viral. That's what happens when you finally speak the truth. People listen. We both jumped a little when the landline rang. No one ever used it except maybe for spam calls or the occasional lost delivery driver. Blaine answered. His face immediately shifted. "Yes, she's here." "One moment." He handed me the receiver. "It's your dad." I hesitated. Then I took it. "Claire." His voice was stern-clipped. "A controlled storm. You've humiliated your mother. Do you know that she hasn't stopped crying since yesterday? Did she cry when she skipped my wedding silence? She's your mother. She's also a grown woman who made her choices. You didn't need to make it public. You didn't need to insult me online. But here we are." He lowered his voice. "We're going to lose the house." "I know, and you're fine with that." "No, I'm just not fine with pretending it's still my job to fix it." His voice broke for just a second. "We never asked for your help." "I know," I said. "That was the problem." I hung up before he could say another word. That evening, Samantha posted a long, passive-aggressive story on Instagram. "Some people thrive off playing the victim. Just because you give money doesn't mean you're the hero." She never mentioned me by name. She didn't have to. The next day, a reporter emailed me asking for an interview. I declined. But what I didn't decline was the voicemail my Aunt Judy left me. "I didn't know, Claire. About the payments. I'm sorry I ever doubted you." That one made me cry again. By the weekend, the story had lost its steam. People moved on, new scandals took its place, but not from my family. Because for the first time in their lives, they had to live in a house of silence. No more admiration, no more deference, no more fairy tale, just reality. And soon, even the house would be gone. And they would finally know what it felt like to be unseen, to be unheard, to be left behind. Exactly how I had felt for 32 years. Sunday came with heavy gray clouds hanging low over the town. A fitting backdrop, I thought, for the family meeting I never asked for, but was now expected to attend. My phone buzzed with a reminder text from Samantha. 2:00 p.m. sharp. Don't be dramatic, Claire. I stared at her message, then silenced my phone. Let them wait. I arrived at 2:15. The front door opened before I could knock. My mother stood there, hair disheveled, face pale and drawn. She hadn't looked like this since the day her father died, a woman worn down by more than just age. "Claire," she whispered, stepping aside. "Come in." I walked past her into the house I had quietly saved for 2 years. The air smelled stale, like old coffee and tension. In the living room, my father sat stiffly in his recliner, arms crossed. Samantha was perched on the edge of the couch, hands clenched tightly together. Her husband Jeremy sat beside her, awkwardly, clearly wishing he were anywhere else. "Thanks for coming," my dad said. "I didn't come for you," I replied. "Then why are you here?" Samantha snapped. I shrugged. "Curiosity. I wanted to see what it looks like when the house of cards finally collapses." Mom winced. "We're not here to fight," she said, her voice brittle. "We just need to understand what happened." "You mean why I stopped paying your mortgage?" Samantha rolled her eyes. "You could have warned them." I looked at her deadpan. "Like they warned me they wouldn't come to my wedding silence." "They had their reasons," Samantha said weakly. Of course, I replied. Your charity brunch was more important. Mom's eyes filled with tears. We made a mistake. You made a choice, I said. Big difference. Dad stood up, then his voice booming across the room. Enough. We didn't ask you to pay for our house. No, I said calmly. You didn't. But you didn't stop to wonder who was. You just enjoyed the comfort. He clenched his jaw. It wasn't your responsibility. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder, placing it on the coffee table. Inside were 2 years' worth of payment receipts, statements, dates, confirmation emails, all bearing my name. Samantha leaned forward, flipping through them. This can't be real. It is, I said. Every payment, every month. While you were getting your nails done, while they were bragging at country clubs, while Mom was posting about family values. She slammed the folder shut. Why didn't you say anything? Because I kept hoping it might buy me something. What? Mom asked, her voice barely audible. Love, I said. A seat at the table. Maybe a sliver of respect. My mother buried her face in her hands. You've always been so difficult, Claire. No, I said. You just never liked that I saw through all of this. This, what Dad demanded, this fantasy, I said, that this family was perfect, that appearances mattered more than people, that Samantha could do no wrong, and I was the problem. She never lied to us, Mom said. Neither did I replied. But you treated me like I had. Samantha stood, voice rising. You're punishing them now because they didn't come to your wedding. I turned to her slowly. No, Sam. I'm not punishing them. I'm just finally letting them experience the reality they forced me to live in for decades. You could have just asked for gratitude. I didn't want gratitude. I said louder now. I wanted a mother who showed up, a father who didn't dismiss me, a sister who saw me as more than a liability. Dad sat down heavily. We're about to lose the house, Claire. You were always going to lose it, I said. I just delayed the inevitable. Mom looked up, eyes red. Please, help us fix this. We'll make it right. I gave a bitter smile. No, you won't. You'll take my help and pretend it never happened. Again. Claire, we'll say thank you. We'll post about it. We'll tell everyone. No, I said. You don't get to control the narrative anymore. This isn't about appearances. Samantha crossed her arms. So what is this then? A performance revenge? This, I said quietly, is closure. I picked up my bag and stood. You're going to let your own parents get evicted? Dad asked, stunned. I already saved you once. That was the limit. Mom reached for my hand, but I pulled back. You could have just come to my wedding, I whispered. Then I walked out. Outside, the sky finally opened, a soft summer rain falling across the front lawn. I didn't run for cover. I let it soak into my skin. Behind me, the house that had stood so solid for my entire life suddenly felt hollow, like a shell of something I used to need. But not anymore. It was 2 days after the family meeting when Samantha called me again. I didn't answer. Then she texted, Claire, can we talk? Just us, please. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the delete button. My first instinct was to ignore her. After everything, after years of smug superiority and carefully curated favoritism, I didn't owe her a single second more. But something about the please stuck with me. Maybe it was the first time in our lives she'd ever asked me for anything without assuming I'd say yes. I texted back, meet me at the cafe near the university, tomorrow at noon. I didn't expect her to show, but she did. And for the first time in my life, Samantha looked small, not polished, not poised, just tired, like someone who had finally run out of energy pretending everything was fine. She sat down across from me, clutching a lukewarm coffee like it was the only thing anchoring her. I didn't know, she said before I could even speak. I stayed silent. I mean, I knew things were bad with Mom and Dad. I knew they were judgmental, but I didn't know you were paying the mortgage. Would it have mattered if you did? She hesitated. I think it would have. I wasn't sure I believed her, but I didn't say that. Instead, I asked, why now? She took a breath. Because everything's falling apart. And I keep thinking about the way you looked at me at the family meeting, like I was a stranger. You are, I said. Or maybe I am. I don't think you've ever really tried to know me. I didn't need to, she said honestly. I thought I already did. I thought you were just bitter, difficult. That word again. She gave a weak smile. I see now what you've had to carry, what you've been hiding, and I think I owe you an apology. I raised an eyebrow. For the mortgage. For more than that. She looked down at her coffee cup. When we were kids, I knew Mom and Dad favored me. I didn't understand it, but I knew it. I knew you were always held to a different standard, that your wins never counted the same way mine did. She looked up, eyes glistening, and I let it happen. I liked being the favorite. I didn't speak, because for the first time she was telling the truth. And then she continued, your wedding happened. And even I was shocked they didn't show. I defended them online, but I was embarrassed. Not for you, for me, because I realized I was part of the problem. She pulled something from her bag and slid it across the table. A letter. Handwritten. Thick paper. For Mom and Dad, she said. I haven't sent it yet. I wanted you to read it first. I unfolded it. It was short but devastating. She told them she was ashamed of how they'd treated me, that their obsession with appearances had cost them their own daughter, that she wouldn't be bailing them out. Not financially, not emotionally. I don't know if it changes anything, she said, but I needed you to know. I see you now. I folded the letter and put it in my purse. I'm not looking for a perfect sister, I said. Just a real one. She nodded. I'd like to try, she said. We finished our coffees in silence, and when we left, she hugged me. Not the polite social kind we'd exchanged at holidays, but a real hug. One that said something had shifted. That night I told Blaine everything. She finally owned it, he asked. Yeah, I said. For the first time in our entire lives. He wrapped his arms around me. You know what that means. What you're not alone anymore. And for the first time I believed that. Later that week I received a call from the mortgage company. The house had officially gone into foreclosure proceedings. My parents had 30 days to vacate unless they could make a full payment over $10,000 now with late fees and legal costs. I didn't respond. Instead, I wrote a final letter to them. No anger, no venom, just the truth. I paid because I hoped it would buy me a seat at your table. I stopped because I realized I didn't want that table anymore. Love isn't something you should have to earn. Claire. I never sent it, but writing it felt like closing a door I had been standing in for years. A week later, Samantha posted a photo on Instagram. It was the two of us smiling outside the cafe. The caption read, "Real love doesn't look perfect. It looks like truth finally spoken. Thank you, Claire." And beneath it in the comments, dozens of people asked what had changed. Her response, "We did." It had been almost 3 weeks since I walked out of my parents' house for what I thought might be the last time. The foreclosure clock was ticking, and every day I expected a call, an email, some kind of desperate attempt at negotiation. Instead, I got silence. Until one morning, while Blaine and I were getting ready to host a small dinner for his coworkers, a package arrived, no return address, no markings. Just a thick beige envelope shoved halfway into our mailbox with my name scrawled in handwriting I hadn't seen in years. I opened it at the kitchen table cautiously like it might explode. Inside was a folder of papers. Legal documents, loan applications, signed agreements, and one photograph. My father standing outside a building downtown Hollis and Price Private Lending, shaking hands with a man in a cheap gray suit. The final page in the folder made my blood run cold. A lien, filed 3 weeks ago, against the house, against my name. I stared at the document, disbelief turning into fury. Claire Blaine's voice pulled me back. He had just come into the room. What's that? I held the folder up slowly, as if it weighed 50 pounds. My dad, I said, voice flat, tried to take out a loan using my name. As collateral. What? He forged my signature, filed a lien. The only reason it didn't go through was because the house is already in foreclosure. Blaine sat across from me, his jaw tightening. Who sent you this? I flipped through the folder again. Tucked inside the flap was a sticky note. On it were 5 words, "You need to see this." I blinked. It could only be one person. Anna, the accountant, my dad's old colleague. She used to babysit us when we were little. We hadn't spoken in years, but she had always had a soft spot for me and had watched silently as my parents funneled every resource into Samantha's ambitions. Apparently, she was done staying silent. That night, I called Samantha. When I told her what had happened, she didn't say a word for almost a full minute. What? She finally whispered. He forged my name, I repeated. He tried to use me again even after everything. And not even directly. He went behind my back and used a private lender. Samantha let out a shaky breath. I'll handle it. What? This time, she said. You're not fighting them alone. An hour later, she called back. Anna confirmed it. He panicked after the family meeting, thought he could fix it all quietly, didn't tell Mom, and when the lien got rejected, he blamed the bank. Of course he did. There's more, she said. I talked to Jeremy. He told me something I think you should know. Okay, Dad's plan wasn't just to save the house. He was going to use part of the loan to cover Jeremy's failed business venture. Apparently, they've been in contact for months. I blinked. So Jeremy was in on it. Not exactly. He backed out, said it felt wrong. That's why the deal stalled. And he told you this now. He said he wanted to come clean, said watching you stand up to them made him rethink everything. I didn't know what to say to that. But I knew what needed to happen next. Send me Anna's statement, I told her. And the paperwork, I'm pressing charges. Claire. No, I let it go for too long. I kept covering for them, hiding the truth. I don't care if it's messy now. I'm done being the family secret weapon. I'll support you, she said. Whatever you decide. That night, I sat with Blaine on the balcony, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. The sky was clear, the air cool, and for the first time in a long while, I felt still. You okay? He asked gently. I think so, I said. Or maybe I'm just finally ready. For what? For the consequences. He squeezed my hand. A week later, my lawyer filed a formal complaint against my father for identity fraud and forgery. The documents, the forged signature, and Anna's signed affidavit made the case airtight. My parents found out on a Tuesday morning when a sheriff's deputy served the paperwork at their front door, along with the final foreclosure notice. They were being evicted in 15 days. That same day, Samantha posted on social media for the second time since our meeting. This time it wasn't just a vague photo or cryptic caption. It was a statement. I love my parents, but love doesn't mean silence. My sister Claire has been protecting this family for years. She paid our parents' mortgage in secret. She was repaid with betrayal. Our father forged her name on a loan application after she stopped. I can't excuse that. I won't. She deserves peace and justice. Claire, I'm with you. It went viral. Again, but this time the tone was different. People were outraged, furious, supportive. Messages flooded in. Claire is a warrior. Your dad should be in jail. Thank you for speaking up. Even people I hadn't spoken to in years were reaching out, apologizing, admitting they hadn't seen the truth. One message from my former high school teacher stood out. You were always the quiet one, but I see now that you were never weak, just waiting. And now you're showing everyone what real strength looks like. I didn't reply, but I saved the message because it reminded me the power shift had already happened. I wasn't the difficult daughter anymore. I was the one who refused to disappear. Sometimes the hardest truth in life is this. The people who raise you can also be the ones who break you. Not with fists or screaming matches, but with silence, favoritism, and the slow erosion of your self-worth. For years, I tried to be the version of a daughter they might finally choose. I bent, I paid, I forgave, until I stopped. When I canceled that mortgage payment, I wasn't just protecting my bank account. I was drawing a line in the sand between the woman I used to be and the one I was finally becoming. I didn't do it to be cruel. I did it because I had to. Because survival isn't just about staying alive, it's about learning to stop bleeding for people who never bothered to bring you a bandage. My parents always thought they were the ones with the power. But what they never understood was this power doesn't come from control. It comes from choice. And I chose myself. I chose peace over obligation, truth over silence, and dignity over desperation. My family's reaction, rage, denial, desperation wasn't about the mortgage. It was about losing control over the person they once believed they could guilt into submission. That person no longer exists. The foreclosure. That was the natural consequence of their choices, not mine. And the criminal charge I filed, that wasn't revenge. It was accountability, something they'd never expected from their difficult daughter. And maybe I am difficult. Difficult enough to say no, difficult enough to protect myself, difficult enough to walk away without looking back. But you know what else I am? Capable, kind, and finally free. I learned that sometimes the apology never comes. The redemption arc you hope for the moment they realize how much they hurt you, it might never arrive. But healing doesn't wait for their remorse. It begins the moment you stop begging for it. So if you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or pushed to the edge of your own story, let me say this. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to demand more. You are allowed to rebuild without the people who broke you. You are not a backup plan. You are not a safety net. And you are definitely not the villain in their narrative just because you finally told the truth. What happened to me wasn't fair. It wasn't kind, but it was clarifying. Because now when I look in the mirror, I don't see the woman who tried to earn love that was never real. I see someone who learned to love herself enough to stop chasing people who only ever saw her value when she was useful. And when Samantha asked me to be her child's godmother, I said yes, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because even in broken families, new beginnings can still take root. I'll teach that baby what real love looks like: unconditional, uncompromising, and free of performance. And one day, if they ever feel like they're too much or not enough, I'll remind them of the truth. I had to fight to learn. Being difficult is not a flaw. It's a form of strength, the kind that keeps you standing when everything around you falls apart. I used to be their scapegoat. Now I'm my own story's hero. And that's a title no one will ever take from me again.